Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Chris with Inside the U. Today I want to talk about the Miami wide receivers going into spring practices, what to look for, what the competition will be like. But first off, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any content on the Miami Hurricanes. Definitely appreciate everybody for doing that. So let's get right into it. The Miami wide receivers definitely have a question mark going into the spring in terms of their consistency from last year. It is a great thing that Miami returns its top leading receiver in Mike Harley, and then Mark Pope and Dee Wiggins have a ton of experience, and Miami brought in Oklahoma transfer Charleston Rambo, someone with good speed, experience, production that they hope will add to the group. But the biggest thing to watch for in the spring will be the young receivers if they can make an impact on the depth chart with their playing time, something that they were unable to do last year. However, I think that there are some guys to watch for, and we'll see if they can actually make an impact and show their production during the spring, which will in turn help them earn playing time for the season. First off, I want to get to Manny Diaz's comments on the wide receivers. So let's take a listen to hear what Manny Diaz says about the number of wide receivers on the team.
Yes, you can play with 12 at wide receiver. That's what we want. Because for us to go at the tempo that we want to play at, we want to have guys that we can roll in. We can get into different personnel groups with 4 wideouts in the game, even 5 wideouts in the game. But for us to be able to put the foot on the gas and really push the tempo the way we want to, we don't want to play with 3 or 4. You know, we want to have some depth.
So what stands out to me with Coach Diaz, he's definitely saying, look, there are a number of wide receivers on the team, but we actually want to play more than what we did a year ago. I find that to be very interesting and also not so surprising, although I do want to wait and see exactly how this will play out, because last year we heard a lot about how the wide receivers going to the spread offense would be more on the field. But they did run a lot of 3 wide receiver sets and 4 wide receiver sets, which Coach Diaz just referred to. But now he'd like to have a little bit more options, playing more guys. They like the depth, but they've got to have guys that can produce. Wide receivers coach Rob Likens talked about that a lot last year, just that he's got to have guys that he can really trust. I'm going to be very skeptical in terms of, will these young guys actually be able to make an impact with their playing time after how Miami distributed the snaps a year ago? Dee Wiggins led the receivers with over 700 snaps on the season, and then Mark Pope and Mike Harley were close to 600. Again, Rambo goes into that mix because he's an experienced guy. I do expect him to be in that top group. And then Miami's backups last year, the next 3 guys did not pass 200 snaps on the season. And that's Keyshawn Smith, Jeremiah Payton, and then Michael Redding III. However, I think when you look at these guys, those next group of receivers, let's talk about first Jeremiah Payton. He's a guy that I was excited about when he first got to Miami. I like what I saw on film from him and also how he performed at the Miami Paradise camps when he was in high school. He's a guy that showed a little bit of flashes his first year, then last year was his second season. I was expecting him to have one of those breakout seasons for the offense because I did think that there was a place for a 4th wide receiver. However, Payton never materialized into a really legitimate threat in and out of the lineup. And then what happened, that with him not producing, they were able to go to a second tight end quite a bit with Will Mallory producing. So that's kind of how they did it with Brevin Jordan and Will Mallory at tight end, and then kind of went mostly with the 3 wide receivers. With Jordan out, do not expect Larry Hodges to make the impact that Will Mallory did. However, I do expect Larry Hodges to go ahead and win that backup spot, although I'm very intrigued by Elijah Arroyo, who's also on campus as a tight end. But the reason why I mentioned that, because based on how the tight ends produced will basically determine how many wide receivers Miami will play on the field. I do think that there are things to like about Jeremiah Payton, although this will be his 3rd season and it is time to see him step up. He's got good lateral movement, he runs good routes, has good hands and speed, but he has to put it all together. And I think last year, you only saw him catch 5 passes, but you also saw him in the mix a little bit with his aggressiveness, sometimes getting some penalties. So obviously you want to see him cut down on that and improve his catches. But I do think there's something there, but I think it's a very important spring for Payton in terms of that, because he's not had that total productive season that we've seen in the first 2 years that he's been at Miami. Michael Redding III was a guy that I thought last year the coaches really liked, wanted to play more. They liked his physicality, and he's really the biggest receiver of the group. And and I have always said that they need someone like that that can, provide that strength, that size at the position. So you'd like to see Redding. He's probably the closest they have at being that guy. So we'll see if Redding can have a good spring. He dealt with injuries early in the fall camp, just was unable to really get in the mix. He did have a touchdown catch, which was good to see in his first year at Miami. But again, he's a guy that could benefit from the spring. And if he's going to really, make a dent in playing time in 2021, it starts with his spring performance. The guy that I'm most excited about, the young receiver I'm most excited about and have been since his arrival, is Keyshawn Smith. You saw it in flashes last year. Really good speed downfield, makes big plays. You heard about his speed, but I think it played well during his first year. It wasn't just something that they talked about and they glowed about, the coaches and players, about his speed and his trainer and things like that. You actually got a chance to see it on the field, although briefly. He did go downfield, makes a couple of big catches. He also drew penalties downfield, which is good to see. I think Keyshawn, this is an important spring for him because, once again, it's a guy that has a chance to earn more playing time because he can provide, a downfield threat. And what Miami's really looking for, whether it's returners or the newcomer or the young guys, is guys that are reliable, that really avoid those drops and the inconsistencies that we saw last year, notably with Mark Pope and Dee Wiggins. Those two were the highest culprits of that. And I know a lot of fans would like to see Miami move on from that. I still want to see what these guys do in the spring in terms of their development. I know that it wasn't a perfect season for either one of them last year, but they did earn a lot of playing time. They did have more catches than a year ago, the previous year, and we'll see if they can take the next step. Certainly both guys have good speed, but they've got to be consistent, and I think that's what it all comes down to. They're going into year 4, and at this point, and if it hasn't happened already, in year 3 really, they should have been able to take that jump with their consistency, but we'll see if they take a continuous jump in year 4, and we'll see if they improve the overall play of the wide receiver. I think those two guys will be given ample looks to improve their play. But again, Rambo's in play, and Harley, I think he's got his position cemented as a leader, as the most productive and most reliable wide receiver of the group. And I know everybody wants to see the receivers, the young guys, do well, and we will see if they can really, make an impact during spring practices. As it stands right now, spring ball's expected to start March 13th, and they're expected to have the full slate of the 15 practices. So if that does stay intact, that's a lot of opportunities for young receivers. With Miami's signees, they're bringing in 3 4-star signees: Romello Brinson, Jacoby George, and Brashard Smith, all local guys who made big plays for their respective teams during their senior years, had highly productive years, and I really like that with all 3 of them. They're not going to be at Miami until the summer, so they will be a little bit behind, and we'll see if they can make an impact when they arrive, how they do in the team 7-on-7 organized events, and then also how they do in workouts in the summer. How quickly they understand the playbook is certainly a big part for young guys to earn playing time. And we will see what wide receivers coach Rob Likens and offensive coordinator Rhett Lashley does with the new receivers, if they're able to give them good looks over the summer and into fall practices. But I think all 3 of them are guys that maybe in small roles to start out with. Maybe it's special teams, a guy like Brashard Smith who did well in special teams, Jacoby George as well. Or maybe it's a guy like Brinson that maybe he gets downfield in some games early on to earn more playing time. I think all 3 guys, regardless of how their season starts as freshmen, I think they're going to be guys to watch for as the year progresses. That's my early prediction with those 3 guys, because I think they all bring something to the table, and it wouldn't surprise me if one was able to make an impact, even though there's a lot of receivers coming back. As it stands right now, Miami will have 13 wide receivers for the 2021 season. We will see if they all stay, and we have seen wide receivers in the past move on from Miami and transfer to different schools for better or more opportunities. So we will see if Miami sticks with all 13. It's actually a number that Manny Diaz said that they like to have a lot of receivers. He mentioned that just because they like to have a lot of depth, a lot of options, and we'll see how it all plays out in Rhett Lashley's offense. Or is Rhett Lashley going to continue to try to implement the run game with De'Aaron King and also the running backs, and also keep the tight ends heavily involved? There's a lot to look for during spring practices. This is just a glimpse of it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Once again, if you do, please hit the like button. And thanks again for subscribing to the channel. Please subscribe if you haven't yet. I just want to thank everybody, and also visit InsideTheU.com for all your coverage of the Miami Hurricanes. And you can follow me on Twitter at InsideTheU. Thanks again for watching, and take care.